fellow Falcoholics, what is up? Welcome to the Falcoholic Live episode 240. I am your host, Kevin Knight at Falcoholic Kevin, joined by my co-host, Adnan Ikic at Say Which Way. Adnan, how we doing tonight?
Doing well. We are officially in week one of the dead period. I think we can call it that, right? It's the time between the draft and training camp. So yeah, it's we're gonna settle in for the long summer ahead, but we are officially beginning it now.
Yep, we are getting there. I try to push that off, but Adnan's right. We're not going to get much more news. Maybe we'll get a Penny Hart signing drop during the show or something like that. But that's probably the most we can
That'll be the
we can
most
expect.
exciting thing we have in the next month.
Exactly. But speaking of excitement, joining us tonight, Eric Robinson at _Eric_Robinson on the Twitter. Welcome back, Eric. How we doing? Well, you might be muted, bud.
Eric, you're muted.
I'm doing pretty well. Sorry about that.
No worries.
Things are looking up for our guys right now. So it kind of feels a little good to be a Falcons fan right now.
Yeah, it's looking good. It's feeling good. I'm certainly of that mind and definitely want to get Eric's takes on the draft classes we're going to be going over today, guys. We're going to be sort of, now that we've had a little bit of time to digest, to look over, we're going to be giving our sort of thoughts on the draft class as a whole. We'll go over the picks. We'll talk about any of the undrafted free agents that we like. It was a lot easier for me to look into those guys this year because there were only 6. So mercifully, only 6 guys to look up. And only one I actually had trouble finding stuff on. But yeah, it's an exciting group. It's a class that I think we all like, and we're gonna dive into that in short order. Before we do, though, guys, want to thank today's sponsor, BetOnline.ag, your number one source for all your sports betting needs, including info, stats, news, and scores. You can get the latest odds and lines for this year's NBA playoffs, or perhaps feeling overly confident in the Falcons, you can bet on Atlanta to win the NFC South right now before the rest of the league catches up to that hype train. Or any other NFL team. If you bet on the Saints, you're banished. But hey, that's on you. You don't have to tell us who you bet on. So, but no matter what you do, guys, BetOnline is always your sports information headquarters this season, as they've got you covered for all your sports wagering needs: basketball, MLB, NHL hockey, right to UFC and boxing. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to get your betting info, including live betting options and your favorite casino and card games that you can play right from your home. So head to the website today or use your mobile device to get in on the action. Be sure to use our promo code BELIEVE, BLEAV, to receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, well, Eric, I know you haven't had a chance to really celebrate the Bijan pick on this program yet. So please talk to us about your excitement now that Bijan Robinson is officially an Atlanta Falcon.
You know what? Is a reach. The kid is mid at best. It goes down on first contact. I don't see the hoop lot. No, I'm kidding.
None of that would matter if you had a Georgia helmet.
He doesn't have that dog in him, Yeah. And by dog, I mean the UGA logo.
On the uniform. That's what matters.
Exactly.
I honestly, man, I'm excited about this. Going into the draft, I kind of figured it was going to come down to either Bijan and maybe one defensive stalwart, whether it was going to be Carter or Gonzalez. And those two just so happened to still be on the board, and they still went, the route of taking Bijan Robinson. And I completely understand. This kid is different, man. He's special. I don't care about the position. I don't care about running back. I don't care about all that. The team obviously doesn't care about that. It's been 3 years in a row. They don't care about positional value, guys. Like, we need to go ahead and toss that term out of the window when we're talking about the Falcons. I think they added a Christian McCaffrey-like player to the unit. And I think that's going to open things up for everybody. It's going to make life easier for Ritter. It's going to make life easier for Pitts, for London, for the offensive line. It's going to open things up for Arthur Smith. I mean, I'm sure you guys saw over the past few days how much Arthur Smith has smiled since Thursday night. And he smiled a lot because he knows in his mind that he has a special wild card in his back pocket now in Bijan Robinson. And I can't wait to see what it looks like.
Yeah, it's really exciting. It's a really exciting pick. You guys know how we feel about Bijan Robinson on this program. I don't want to take full credit for the betting lines moving in his direction. You know, I think Aaron Freeman certainly had his fair share of work put in as well. But I think we can officially say that, you know, between Locked On Falcons and this program, we were leading the charge for Bijan Robinson, and we've been vindicated, Eric. So we've been vindicated.
Right. For a while, you know what? We took a lot of punches along the way, but you know what? It was worth it. It was worth it. This kid has a chance to be special, man, and you know he's not going to be your typical bell cow back. I think he's just going to be a chess piece, and he, like I said, he can have a Christian McCaffrey like feel to the offense where he's getting maybe 20 touches a game, but it's not straight carries. It may be, you know, 15 rushes and 5 pass and 5 receptions and stuff like that. I think he's going to open up a different dimension for this offense.
And I know that, you know, we take PFF with a grain of salt, but I think he was PFF's highest graded running back coming out of college in 15 years. So just think about the names coming out of college regarding the great running backs. You know, you had Derrick Henry in Alabama. You had Leonard Fournette, who was a monster at Auburn. You had Saquon Barkley. You had McCaffrey. You know, you had Ezekiel Elliott. You had Todd Gurley. So, you know, Bijan Robinson is being put in this type of company. It is a lot of pressure, but you know, that sort of comes with the territory of being a top 10 pick, of being the number 8 overall pick as a running back. And I mean, I think he was the genuine BPA. And this team is following through with that plan. Like, at the very least, no matter what you think of the plan, no matter what you think of the pick, you can't say that this front office doesn't have a vision when it comes to their selections. Well, that they don't have a plan, because they are proving that they're going to load up in free agency on these positions that are needed, that are necessary, and then they are going best player available year in and year out. And you know, we know that. And you know, whether you like it or don't like it, we've lived through some regimes that have not always had a plan, that have, you know, flipped back and forth. And it is nice to have, you know, to be run by a team that does have a genuine vision. We'll see what the results are, but you know, that's comforting at the very least.
Yeah, I think it's. Oh yeah, go ahead, Eric. Yeah.
And I want to add, to piggyback off that, you know, that's a similar formula that Cincinnati followed, and you see where it got them. You know, they pretty much used free agency to build up the defensive side of the ball, and they used the draft to add, you know, premium talent on the offensive side of the ball. And then when they got to a certain level as far as consistency and being good, they truly went BPA. You know, they went after a guy like Dax Hill last year, but they didn't necessarily have to, but they, you know, that was a pick towards the future. So I think I think it's a formula that can work. I definitely see it. You know, this pick here, it took them 3 years to kind of sort of get the vision, you know, as clear as possible. And if you can't see it at this point, then you're just trying not to. But it's quite obvious what they're trying to do right now.
Yeah.
They have a vision and a plan off the field, and on the field they have a true identity. They're going to run the ball at you every single time if they have to. And I mean, all the great teams have that true identity where it's like, you look at them and you're like, yeah, I know exactly what they're all about. I know what their philosophy is. And, you know, like I said, we haven't really had that. We haven't had that much in Falcons history over the past number of decades. But now, you know, we'll see if it works. But this team is zagging when everyone else is zigging. And, you know, it's either not going to work, or they're going to look like geniuses, and geniuses that other teams start to copy and emulate, because that's what success brings.
Yeah. I like that they have a plan, and quite frankly, you know, I if they were doing what every other team is doing too, as long as it was coherent, I'd be happy. But I mean, I think there's something to the idea that, like, from a strategic standpoint, like, you see all of these NFL teams sort of building to stop 11 personnel in the pass and all of these things, and then you see what the Falcons are doing here, which is if you're going to try to play, nickel or dime packages against us, then we're going to make your life hell. Like, we're going to make things really, really difficult for you, really quite bad for you. And I think it's a good strategy. It allows them to do a lot of what the 49ers do and just make things very difficult for opposing defenses. And the 49ers have also shown, in a system where you de-emphasize receiver and you build a strong run game and you use a lot of play action and all these things, you don't necessarily have to depend on your quarterback being this elite passer in order to make things hum. You for the 11 personnel offenses, like what we've seen in Cincinnati, like what we see in Kansas City, you need an elite passer to make those offenses run at the highest level. And the Falcons don't have that right now. I mean, maybe there's a slight chance that Ritter could turn into that. I think there's a decent to good chance that he at least turns into like a solid starter. But anything more than that, I think, is probably expecting a lot. But they may not need that. They may be able to have Ritter be. I think they may be able to have Ritter be that. I don't want to say game manager, because I think he can be more than that. But I think Ritter doesn't have to turn it on to this super high level.
Right.
So I'm excited to see what they do. And look, it'll make things easier for Ritter too, that he doesn't necessarily have to be leaned on to throw the ball, 40 plus times a game. And hopefully, the defensive improvements, to which we'll get to, will help with that as well going forward.
I don't like using that term game manager either.
Yeah.
Because it feels like it's diluting the skill set of Ritter. Like you're limiting him. I don't want to box him in. He's a to me, he has the potential to be a quality starter in the league. And like you were saying, their team, it's going to be a run first approach, and it's going to force defenses that are playing their base nickel defense, is going to force them to possibly, instead of having that corner on the field, having an extra safety or having another linebacker on the field. And if that's the case, if that's what you're adjusting to, then they're just going to adjust and say, okay, you know what? Well, that linebacker is going to have to cover Bijan in the slot. That linebacker is going to have to cover Cordero in the slot, or Janu. So it's going to be matchup centric. And I think that's what's going to make it so much fun. The amount of versatility in this offense right now is so intriguing.
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of the plan, and speaking of the commitment to running the ball and that side of the offense, the Falcons also added to what was arguably the weakest spot on offense at left guard, with a big-time addition in Matthew Bergeron, who is a player that I really love, who, for those of you that were on the last live show a week ago, you heard us talk about Bergeron at 44. They end up trading up to get him a little bit, which probably was wise, considering the Saints and the Panthers may have been eyeing him, and the Cowboys at 26 were also considering him. I honestly think he would have been a better pick than Mossy Smith, for being honest. But
I think I read somewhere that the Bengals were interested as well. They had their eye on him as well. So
yeah,
he was. A lot of teams were on. He was on their radar.
They probably saw a Senior Bowl tape.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. And it's an interesting pick. I think somehow it caught people off guard. Everyone was really focused on like Osiris Torrance, who I tried to sort of tell people was not really a great scheme fit, considering his athleticism and the fact that he's, more of a gap power guy. I think obviously I was a big fan of John Michael Schmitz. I'm surprised that he didn't go until so much later, but even Schmitz didn't have the athletic testing that Matthew Bergeron did. So the Falcons clearly want to emphasize that part of their offensive line, and Bergeron's ability to play tackle is a big plus too. But yeah, Eric, what do you think about that second pick, Bergeron, coming in here?
He is a guy that's played left and right tackle in his career at Syracuse, and he was instrumental in their run game for the Orange. And he's gonna be pretty much the favorite at this point to win the left guard spot. He's 6'5", close to 320, powerful build, great hands, sturdy, athletic, great footwork. good power base when it comes to run blocking and stuff like that. The one thing that was a knock against him was he didn't have the length on the edge, and at times in pass sets, he had some issues. You going back to the Clemson game, and I think he had some issues going one-on-one against Miles Murphy. But sliding him on the inside, a lot of analysts, a lot of scouts feel like he can be a 10-year vet. He can be a possible future All-Pro there, and I think it's going to be a natural fit. I will admit, however, though, Cody Mauch would have been a better pick for me, but that's just my preference. But that's where they went. They scouted their guy. They went up and got him, and like I said, he's the favorite to start right now.
Yeah. I think Bergeron's better than Cody Mauch, but I won't really argue because I think a lot of people had them ranked pretty similarly. So, I mean, I think it's really a preference thing. I think Mauch has further to go, but, you obviously like his upside too. I do think that for Bergeron, I think his size to play tackle helps me boost him a little bit, whereas I think Mauch really does have to move to guard. But either way, the Falcons are playing Bergeron at guard, so we're not really talking about tackle at this point, but maybe at some point in the future. But yeah, I know, Adnan, we got your take on Bergeron as well, but how do you feel now, a couple days removed? You still pretty happy with the pick?
No, I was very happy back then. I'm even happier now after finding out just how much the Cowboys wanted him, because this is one of those things where you can do as many mock drafts as you want, you can do as much analysis pre-draft as you want, but at the end of the day, nobody really knows what's on these teams' boards, because we more or less only have about 30% of the information. Like, these teams are the ones that are interviewing these players. They have all the access to all of the medicals. They have access to all of their coaches, all of their former coaches. So Bergeron, he seems like he's going to have a lot of success at left guard. At the next level, we already know his prowess in the run game, and in the passing game, he did a good job in the passing game at the Senior Bowl, and he seems like the type who will get better and better as time goes along, because, like you guys said, he doesn't have to worry about not being long enough at tackle. He doesn't have to worry about those speed rushers. He has a very strong base, throughout his entire body, and especially in his lower body, that'll really serve him well as at the guard position. But one of my favorite things is his issues, his weaknesses when it comes to guard are pretty fixable. I think hand placement, like the technique with his hands, was one of the main knocks on him coming out of college. And the Falcons have one of the best offensive line coaches in Dwayne Ledford in the NFL, who can get his hands on him and who can work with him on, some of those fixable issues. And I think the Falcons got themselves, a superior run blocker to now pair in an offensive line with 4 other, very strong run blockers. And they are going with that identity, but at the end of the day, I think the Falcons got themselves, possibly a starter at left guard for the next decade, who can also has the versatility to, step into one of the tackle positions in a pinch. But I am happy that it sounds like they're not going to make the same mistake as with Jalen Mayfield, where they play him at right tackle throughout all of training camp, and then, hey, week 1 is just coming around the corner and we're just going to stick you a left guard. I'm glad that they're going to let him work at that guard position, over the entire summer and over all of training camp and over all of preseason, and just have him actually be ready by week 1.
Yeah, I agree. And
yeah,
go ahead, Eric. Yeah.
I believe, little tidbit here, I believe Ledford recruited Bergeron when Ledford was at Louisville. So it's kind of sort of a cool full circle thing a few years back. Also, as you were saying, Adnan, about the whole Jalen Mayfield thing, I think this is the staff, the front office, kind of sort of admitting that they missed on that. They're kind of sort of righting those wrongs a little bit.
They did him a disservice. For as bad as Mayfield was, that was just not fair to him in the least, but that entire situation.
Right. Yeah. Right. Right. The transition for one thing, and not to mention, you're transitioning, and then the gauntlet of defensive tackles he had to open up against to get his career. Yeah.
Yeah, and then the back injury last year that ended his entire season. I mean, it's a rough 2-year stretch for him, but it's sort of like they just couldn't wait anymore at that point. Like they needed to get another guy in house. And this is going to be a fierce battle on the interior for those depth spots at this point, where Jalen Mayfield, Javon Greene, the 7th rounder, who we'll get to. Like, I mean, there's a lot of guys in that room now. So hopefully those depth guys can be really actually quality guys and not just sort of street level players. And I think there's some hope for that for sure. But moving on to the 3rd round, we do get that edge rusher in Zach Harrison, who I think is pretty intriguing. I think if you look into his advanced stats a bit more, like the PFF pressures and things like that, like his stats actually look better in terms of a pressure rate and things like that than just the raw sacks sort of imply. But I'm curious, Eric, what do you think about the Zach Harrison pick, in the 3rd round there?
Man, you know what? This is where Ryan Nielsen is going to earn his keep as a developer, because Zach Harrison is such a raw piece of clay. And, he was supposed to be next in line, at Ohio State when it comes to the edge rushers. You had the Bosas, then you had Chase Young, and Zach Harrison was supposed to be the next one. He didn't really hit that stride at Ohio State. There was a great deal of inconsistency there. But man, I tell you one thing, he is one of those guys. He's definitely a get off the bus type guy. Like when they arrive to the stadium and the first guys that you see get off the bus and you look at him and you're like, wow, 6'6", 275. And that's just, that's not even being able to be developed by the NFL organization yet.
I think you're at 4'5", 40. His arms are long as hell.
36.
Like,
yeah. 36.
He has like all of the tools you can ask for. Like he was born to play defensive end.
Yes. And I think this is a good situation for him because his coordinator is a guy who has built a reputation around the league and around college football as well as being a really, quality developer. But he also has Calais Campbell next to him. And if I'm the team, I'm putting his locker right next to Calais Campbell. You pick his brain, follow him to lunch. When he goes to the weight room, you're right there. You need to, be connected to the hip of Calais, because I think that's the perfect mentor for him. And I think they're looking at Harrison being the heir apparent to Calais whenever Calais is ready to hang it up. But man, there's so much potential with this kid. I think the one thing about him though, and I'm pretty sure you guys saw it on film too, thinking way too much. Wait, when you're a freak athlete like he is, I just need you to go. I just need you to see that guy right there with the ball under center, go hit him. That's all. Just go do that. And I think he started to do a little bit of that towards the end of last season, and it started to click. He only had 3.5 sacks, but I think he had like 30 pressures last year.
Yeah, he did.
Season.
The pressure numbers were good. Yeah. The finishing didn't exactly happen, but
he didn't finish. But man, he doesn't have to come in day one and like be the guy. That's the great thing about it as well. You can sit and you can learn, and I think this is where the developmental factor of Ryan Nielsen can pay off here.
Yeah, it's sort of like getting, Marcus Davenport or Peyton Turner, but in the 3rd round. So
yeah, and a better athlete than those two for sure. In my opinion, those two guys, they had better careers overall in terms of production. But this kid here, man, he can, if he rounds into form, I think he can honestly be a 7 to 8 sack a season guy. And right now, I think he's a decent run defender. Just right now, if you throw him on the field now.
Yeah. I was saying it I recorded a show with Charles McDonald that'll go up next week. But sort of like he's the Calais Campbell backup, he's going to fill the same role as Calais Campbell. But he's also sort of the replacement for Ade Ogundeji. I feel like, it seems like the writing's on the wall with all the additions there, that Ogundeji's time on the active rosters is probably coming to an end. And they're looking for someone who can be a much more reliable run defender. And I think Harrison absolutely checks that box. But I'm not even sure that Harrison will be a game day active to start things off, just considering who else is in the building. But he doesn't have to be either. He can take his time to get ready.
But man, the ceiling is sky high. The pressure numbers, normally we judge long-term success more so by the pressure numbers versus the raw sack numbers, because a lot of luck can go into sacks. Like, we remember Vic Beasley in 2016. I think he converted 50% of his pressures into sacks that year, whereas Khalil Mack, who had a sack less, converted 24% or something, some very smaller number than that. But it's a really good sign that he initially beat his man. It's just he just needs that little bit. And that's where Ryan Nielsen can come in. And the ceiling with Harrison is a double-digit sack guy. I'm not saying he's going to get there, but I'm saying he has all of the tools to get there and to be an absolute steal. I'm telling you, if Harrison played at the University of Georgia, can you imagine just how thrilled the fan base would be at this pick right now?
Man, just we need some dogs in here. But we all know they filled their dog quota last year for the next 10 years. So, yeah.
One little quirk that I saw on film, if you guys notice, a lot of his sacks are forced fumbles as well. He's getting the ball out of the quarterback's hands. Now, whether the defense recovers, is one thing, but I went back and looked, and I'm like, man, there's a lot of times where he's rounding that corner and he's closing in on the QB, and he's not only getting a sack, but he's causing fumbles. I remember I believe there was a game against Maryland last year where they were up 6 with less than a minute left. Talia Tagovailoa was in the end zone, came around the end, sack, boom, they picked it up and iced the game right then and there with less than a minute left. That's where that length comes into play. He's not only getting to the quarterback, but he's also stripping the quarterback as well.
Yeah, I think it's definitely the most. I think this is probably the most wait and see of the first 4 picks. But I think it makes perfect sense to go this direction, considering I think if you didn't get one of the top guys at 8, there were maybe some options at 44 that could have been a little bit earlier contributors. You think about if you went with Keon White there, but I think what people need to understand, is if you waited on offensive line instead and took the edge rusher at 44, I think you were going to have, unless, Chandler Zavala is the guy that we always come back to, but I think a lot of people don't know that there are some significant medicals with Zavala in terms of his back.
Yeah.
And, I think that's a little bit of a risky proposition long-term, and I think they were trying to get someone with more tackle flexibility, and that's why they went with Bergeron. But, I do think that both these guys in terms of Zach Harrison and Bergeron are good values at where they were picked. And I think Bergeron we'll get to see a little bit earlier. I know everyone's talking about why didn't they go with Adebawore instead of Zach Harrison. And I think the reason for that is that Adebawore and Zach Harrison are completely different prospects. So Adebawore is a guy that you're trying to figure out, is he an edge rusher or an interior guy? He's small. I think he's 6'2", 285, so not weight-wise small, but really good athlete, obviously, but he doesn't have that length. He's not necessarily the prototypical edge rusher.
No.
So
I think, I think he's more of an interior guy at the next level. And not to knock him as a prospect. He's a really good athlete. I mean, if the Falcons were to take him, I would be pretty confident he can definitely turn into something, but these are definitely 2 different prospects here. And like you said, this is a waiting game. I feel a lot more comfortable with this pick because of the depth that they've added along the defensive line this entire offseason. This was a situation where they didn't address it and they went ahead and took a guy like Zach Harrison, then I'll be a little nervous. But
yeah,
this
for
is
sure.
definitely a good staff weight type pick. Yeah.
Yeah. Let me get to some of these questions we got here. Some of these tips from Michael Scott with the $10. What's up, Michael? Welcome to the Patreon as well. I believe it's the same Michael Scott. $10 tip, man. Thank you so much. He says, no question, just an appreciation tip for that day 3 draft grind from this past Saturday. You're welcome, man. Appreciate the support and the love there. We got Corey with the $5. What's up, Corey, man? How you doing? He says this is his benefit of hindsight draft here. So Skoronski at 8, and then going with Keely Ringo at 44, Tank Bigsby at 75, keeping that 110 pick, going with Adeboire at 110, Clark Phillips at 113. Yeah, keep that one. That one I like. Yeah. And then going for Andre Carter and Eli Ricks with those 7th rounders. Yeah, I mean, with the benefit of hindsight, I could see where you're trying to maximize value there with some of those guys, but yeah, I still, honestly, like, I think I still like this class a little bit better, but we're obviously giant Bijan homers, so like, I mean, take that into account with your analysis, of course, but yeah, that's sort of where we're at.
Good luck convincing. Yeah, good luck convincing us otherwise.
Yeah, and that's not your fault. That's not anybody else's fault. We're just giant Bijan homers. So, and then Bill Vats, I see your question from before the show. I will get to that towards the end when we sort of wrap this up, because I think it'll sort of dovetail nicely with where we're going with this discussion. But let's move on to the 4th round pick. This is my favorite, not counting Bijan. With Clark Phillips, who I think is an absolute steal at this point. Love Clark Phillips. I don't know if we ever actually talked about Clark Phillips, Eric, so I'm curious your take on him at this point in the draft.
If Clark Phillips was 6'2", I think he might have been the first corner taken this year.
The tape was, I mean, top 2.
But no.
I mean, Devon Witherspoon's tape was maybe better, but that's the only guy I could say was comfortably better. Deontay Banks is pretty good too.
The one thing about Phillips, he's the biggest flaw, quote unquote, the biggest red flag is the size, and everyone knows that. But if you look at you throw on the tape, man, you're looking at a technician. This kid he went 113th, but there's not 112 players in the draft better than him. He should have been a 2nd round pick, and to get him in the 4th, that's tremendous value. Right now, and I tweeted it out, and I think you chimed in on it as well, Kevin. Mike Hughes, better watch his back.
Yeah, I can never slander Mike Hughes. It's not possible, but yeah,
I know that's your guy, but Mike Hughes better be looking over his shoulder, man. Clark Phillips is a crafty defender, playmaker. Has some of the best hands of any DB in the draft. Again, the only knock is that he's not 6'1", 6'2", but he's still able to hold his own on the perimeter against bigger receivers. But he's going to be slotted, inside as a nickel corner likely, and he's going to face the smaller receivers. And I think that footwork and those sharp mechanics of his.
Are you guys implying a very intense nickel cornerback competition this preseason?
Man,
yeah.
I mean, the thing with Phillips is like he hasn't played the slot really. That's like he just play, but I honestly wouldn't rule out him being like a DJ Reed type player where he just is able to play outside despite being small. Now DJ Reed I think has like 30-inch arms and Phillips has 29-inch arms, so like the length is slightly better for Reed, but like he's such a technician. Like he handled Drake London just fine. He handled Jordan Addison. Like I mean, I'm not sure. Yeah, I mean. I'm not sure I'd ask him to play against Mike Evans or something, but like, I mean, he hasn't had issues with the big receivers really, because he just, with him, it's all positioning, it's technique, it's anticipation, jump balls in the red zone. Maybe that's one spot where you would think that would be more of a problem. But I mean, with how teams are, if the Falcons, and Joe brought up a good point, like, his size doesn't really mean much if you're playing heavy man coverage, because you need guys that can match up with a lot of different types of receivers. And for those shorter, shiftier receivers, he might be the perfect matchup guy there. But, maybe the slot too, I don't know.
I think one thing that nobody really mentions with Phillips that, even shows up at the top of the scouting report is that he is pretty much, he lives and breathes this. Like he is a savant when it comes to the game. And all of the scouts who have watched him, who have scouted him have raved at the fact that, this is he spends like endless hours just studying and just like working on his technique, working on his craft. It seems like he is true. He can't do anything about his height, but it feels like everything else that he has control over, he is making it into a positive for himself. And I mean, you saw it last year. He was a unanimous All-American. Like, to get that in the fourth round, to get what's the award? A Doak Walker? Is it a Doak Walker award?
Or what is it?
Cornerback? Or
I know what you're talking about. Yeah,
he was.
Is it Biletnikoff or is that wide receiver?
No, it's not Biletnikoff.
That's right. Yeah. I should know this. Yeah. I'm embarrassed, but yeah. But yeah. It might be dope. Yeah.
But yeah, he was a finalist for the best secondary player in the nation award. He has,
Jim Thorpe.
Jim Thorpe. That's it. Yep.
Jim Thorpe award. Sorry, Jim Thorpe. Legend right there. But definitely, like, he has everything that you want regarding the intangibles. He has the tape. He has, the proof is there. The proof, like, he has the track record, and you're telling me that just because he's a bit shorter that he's going to fail at the next level? Like, no, absolutely not. We saw Brent Grimes have a hell of an NFL career, and he was just 1 inch taller than him.
Yeah, it's not impossible. He would be an outlier playing the outside at that size, but I think there is an opportunity for him to do that. I mean, he did it in college. He did it against some very good receivers. Drake London was a guy who gave fits to pretty much everyone, and Clark Phillips was one of the only guys that could match up with him, despite the size disparity there. So that gives me a lot of hope. I think that Phillips is gonna be a starter by the end of the season, no question. He's gonna get out there. But even if he's just the cornerback 4 to start the season, like, having him as the first guy off your bench, he's gonna play.
That's
like, yeah,
CB4.
Yeah, it's like, oh, that's great. Yeah. So it's even if my son Mike Hughes still keeps the slot job, but Mike Hughes' contract, it's guaranteed this year. It's not next year. But even then, next year, it's not all that expensive. Hughes at that price, if Hughes is your cornerback 4, he could play outside and inside. So him being your CB4, I think, is fine. Also,
depth piece. Like,
exactly.
Hughes doesn't start. That's a great. Like, it's never bad to have depth. Like, we've seen it with this team year in and year out. Like, this team has really succumbed on the defensive end to a lack of depth. And now it seems like, this defensive end rotation is one of the deepest in the league. There's no, like, outright superstar, but there are a lot of guys who can play. We have more depth along the interior of the defensive line than I can ever remember before with Grady Jarrett, alongside Grady Jarrett. And then now you've built up this great, like, bit of cornerback depth. The only position on the defense where I'm really, like, concerned about a lack of depth is safety. And even then, you got the 7th round rookie out of Alabama, Helms.
Yeah, DeMarco Helms or whatever. DeMarco Helms.
Helms.
Something like that. We're gonna find that out. We're gonna workshop that. But yeah. Somebody tell me if you know in the chat. I think it's Helms, but
he won't be a special teams contributor, but still, it's like, all right, like, maybe he can be coached up a little bit to contribute on the field. But this defense is deep. This is the deepest defense from strictly second and third stringers that I can remember in over a decade for this team.
I also want to throw out there, Clark Phillips was the Pac-12 Defensive Player of the Year over Christian Gonzalez.
His tape was way better than Christian Gonzalez. Just the measurables were in Gonzalez's favor, by far, obviously. But
this kid has game, man. And like Adnan was saying, he's a nerd. He's a football nerd. He studies. He watches film. He studies technique. He looks to get better on his technique every single day. I'm telling you, man. Like I said, if the kid was 6'2", he would have been a top 10 pick. He would have been the first cornerback taken this year, in my opinion. Playmaker.
He was like he early in the process. He was like a fringe first rounder. So I mean, and I think he measured in like a couple inches shorter than expected, which teams lie about that all the time. But like, and he didn't run crazy fast. I mean, I think he ran like a 4.5 flat, which guys is still like almost 70th percentile for corners.
But he plays faster. He plays like a guy that runs a legit 4.4. You throw on. Look at his pick six against UCLA and watch him outrun DTR to the end zone, and you tell me whether that's a 4.5 or not.
Yeah. Well, and then you look at the 10-yard and the 20-yard splits, and they're both like 90th percentile, basically. So that short area and middle area quickness is still elite. It's just the long speed, with the shorter strides at 5'9", he just doesn't have the elite long speed, but more than fast enough, and the anticipation makes up for a lot of that. Like, the technique and the anticipation, that buys you 0.1. It buys you.
I don't know, guys. I think this transition for him is going to be seamless. It wouldn't surprise me at all if he's the week 1 starter. It really wouldn't.
It wouldn't. He's that good. Well, I think, what was it on the day 3? I think on the day 3
starters. That will be 3 starters in the draft. That's the Arthur Blank photo right there.
I want 3 starters.
Right.
Yep. I think they were saying in the day 3 press conference that like, oh yeah, the first thing he did when he got on the phone, like after the call, was like, oh yeah, so when am I getting my playbook? Can you send that to me, please? Like didn't even like have a drink or anything. Just like, oh yeah, where's my playbook?
What does that tell you?
Right.
Those are the
He's ready to work.
Yeah. Right. It's like, this is why, like when I was reading a scouting report, that's the first thing that showed up on the scouting report, that he is a savant when it comes to this game. That, we have come across players, and we have had players on this team where, they had all the tools, but they just didn't care. Like, they did not care about the game enough. And I mean, like, sure, you don't have to, like, nobody's saying like, you can have your own interests. But having these guys where football is their interest, like those are the guys that end up being the most successful.
Yeah. Those are the guys that are in the league 10 years or 10 plus years because of their ability to sit there and soak in the game and understand it and learn it from, in different variations. Like, that's pretty much, that's the one green flag. That's the one trait that everyone loved about Desmond Ritter. The fact that he may not have all the physical skills you want as a quarterback, but when it comes to the IQ and the mindset, like he's got it. He's polished. And I'll say the same thing about Phillips.
There's only one thing that would have made me feel a lot better about the Phillips pick. If only he had played for Georgia. That's the only thing.
If he had just been a dog.
A dog.
Like, people are like, oh, why didn't the Falcons take Keely Ringo? Clark Phillips is better than Keely Ringo. Okay? Like, I'm telling you right now.
You shut your mouth, Kevin. Remember that
come get me in 3 years when Clark Phillips is a better pro than Keely Ringo.
Keely was gone in the 4th anyway. They couldn't get him if they wanted to. I mean, I thought he might have been a target pick there in 4th round, but
yeah. Now that I guess maybe it's a hot take with Clark Phillips being better than Keely Ringo, but I'm not the only one who had him higher.
I'll say this: Phillips is the better playmaker of the two, for sure.
Got the better tape, damn sure.
Yeah.
Ringo has the size. Yeah.
Keely's that has the size. He's probably the better athlete, the better pure athlete. He probably has the higher ceiling. But right now, in terms of just playmaking ability and instincts, Phillips got that, man. I'm sorry.
Yeah, but how many titles is Phillips have?
Yeah, well, even Brett Jukes likes Clark Phillips, and he hates Utah. So, so that's how I knew.
We mentioned Brett Jukes as soon as the pick happened.
Yeah, I was like, oh man, Brett. He tweeted out, he was like, oh no, like I'm okay with this. So that's when I knew.
And then you know what? Guess who gets to coach him?
Yeah,
arguably the best DB coach in the game.
Right. So I'm excited to see what happens with Phillips. I think he's going to force his way onto the field early. I don't think they can keep him off. So, so by the end of the year, he'll be starting. That's my prediction now, at minimum by the end of the year. So,
I say week. I'll go out on that one.
I like it. I like the boldness for sure. All right, I'm going to clip that off.
Middle of the year, just to keep it a middle.
Okay, Adnan's middle. Adnan's like week 8.5, it'll be announced as the starter midway through the week, before week 9 starts. And then, Eric
That's
is
what
week
I thought
1.
with Desmond Ritter, but that didn't happen. So
Well, it should have happened. Yeah, it should have happened. But yeah, 2 7th-rounders. DeMarco Helms, we talked about a little bit. I do like that pick. I think it's kind of underrated. I think he was certainly a worthy late day 3 guy. Athletically, not a flashy athlete, but this was a guy who led Alabama in tackles, known for his physicality. The Falcons don't really have that enforcer safety. I think he can fill that role, and I think he'll be a good special teamer. And look, they played him at all 3. They played him at both safety spots and in the slot, and even as an overhang sort of extra linebacker at times. And you don't play that role at Alabama all over the secondary unless you're a really smart player. And I think Helms definitely is a guy that has roster upside without question. I think right now you could pencil him in as the 4th safety. But yeah, Eric, haven't gotten your take on that one at all. What do you think about the Helms edition?
He's to me, he's a traditional strong safety, 6'1", 210. When he comes downhill, he's coming with bad intentions. He knows how to lay the lumber. But the one thing about him that stands out to me, and I've said it multiple times before, the further away from the line of scrimmage he is, the more nervous I get. I know he's played some single high, he's played a little bit of everything, but I don't know if he should do that at the next level. I thought about this. What do you guys think about just adding 15 pounds and making him a will?
Helms, maybe.
I figured that as an immediate possibility, because he was a great run defender.
Absolutely.
EFF graded him as the 2nd best run defender on the team right after Brian Branch. He had over 100 tackles.
Yeah.
That's his specialty. It's just he doesn't really have the quickness, the agility.
But at linebacker, his testing is good. It's just, the safety. And I think if he stays in the box, he's fine as a safety. He's just not someone you want matched up on wide receivers. But tight ends, he was good at that. He's fine in zone. He's comfortable.
That's why I thought let's slide him down there.
I wonder. It could be a thing.
That may be their plan. I think he'll be a day 1 special teamer for sure.
Oh yeah, I think he's making the roster. And that's why I love it. I know it's he's not this crazy flashy addition, but if you have a 7th rounder that you draft and you're he's making the roster, that's a good 7th round pick because it's not a given. It's not a given.
And you know what? And I'm not talking about making him a will in year 1.
Yeah. Maybe it's a gradual thing.
Let him be your backup strong in year 1 and let him gradually put on weight. And then by year 2, year 3, then kind of sort of ease him into that will spot at that point. That way you're still covering the backup strong safety spot, and you can kind of sort of punt a little bit on it until next year. You may find a better option for that particular spot next year, and you say, hey, you know what? We'll take Helms next year. We'll slide him down to the will. We got a true backup strong safety that we can utilize in coverage, as well as a run defender. So it just crossed my mind, but he's a physical guy, and like you said, I special teams is his thing day 1. As soon as he walks through the door.
Yeah. I wondered if I was thinking this during the draft too, but I wonder if the Falcons were eyeing Sidney Brown at 75 and he ends up going just a little bit before and they pivot to Zach Harrison. So I do wonder about that. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure they were. I know going into the draft, though, I know that Sidney was probably a real option in the 2nd round.
Yeah.
If they were so happy to miss out on Bergeron, they might have pulled the trigger there with Sidney Brown. So we'll see. But Helms brings a enforcer type mentality to the defense that they can use for sure.
Yeah, for sure. The last pick, Javon Greene, not a guy I had scouted at all or watched at all prior to the draft. The name is awesome. I love that name. It's really unique and cool. And you turn on the tape, and honestly, for a 7th rounder, he's good. I didn't really see a lot of problems on tape. There's the one problem is he's under 6'2", barely, right? He's 6'1" and 7/8. I'll give him 6'2". Okay, so I'm gonna say 6'2" from now on because I'm 5'11" and 7/8. I give myself 6, so I'm gonna give prospects the same boost, right? But it's the size, he's under 300 pounds too. And it's not that, he was like 297. So it's like, okay, he could probably bulk up to 300. That's not a big deal. But you do wonder if, he's got the short arms too. I think he has 31.25-inch arms. So, you do wonder if center is his future, but he hasn't played center before. This one was a little bit more of a head scratcher for me because you look at the interior group that the Falcons have, and it is so crowded. Like, what is his real shot of making the roster? Or maybe they just really want to get him in here and develop him as a future center guard, combo guy. Like maybe he's the next Matt Hennessy, like the Hennessy successor essentially. Because this is the last year of Hennessy's rookie contract. So curious what you think about Javon Greene, Eric.
What is their infatuation with undersized interior linemen?
Like, they love those like hybrid center guard, like Ryan Newsel, newsflash.
That's what their infatuation is. They don't have to spend too much in premium picks.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I guess this is their thing. I guess. Yeah, I didn't really scout a whole lot about him as well, but I think he was a 2-year captain at South Carolina. His last 2 years there as a starter, he was a captain on that offensive line, and he's someone that got better over time in his career. I think he's probably going to be a center at the next level. And I also would like to see him definitely throw on some weight, but on tape, as a kid, he definitely looked physical within the run game. One thing I did see plenty of though, his ability to be able to pull and get out on the perimeter.
Athletic for sure. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. He showed that. He checked that box for a 7th rounder. So I think that's one thing that's definitely intriguing. But just trying to figure out, man, like what is up with them and these sub 300 interior offensive linemen that
they don't care about that. Love. Yeah, Drew Dalman too.
I guess not.
And it's like it's crazy. Like they're gonna have a battle royale for those depth spots. I mean, you have to think Matt Hennessy and Matthew Bergeron are gonna square off for left guard, and that'll be an interesting one. And the loser is gonna be the primary interior backup. But like behind those guys for those depth spots, we've got veteran Jonathan Harrison, long-term NFL center. Ryan Newsel, who's my guy. Love Ryan Newsel. He was one of the best guys on their reserve offensive line in the preseason last year, stuck on the roster for a good part of the season. They signed Kyle Hinton right at the beginning of the offseason when he got cut. Justin Schaefer, last year's 6th-round pick. Jalen Mayfield still kicking around. And now you got Javon Greene in the mix. That's 6 guys competing for like one spot, maybe. So, I mean, it's pretty wild. Yeah.
I'll say this as well, man. Are we heading to another training camp battle between Hennessy and Dalman? Because if we are, I'll be honest, I'm getting a little tired of it. It's been 3 years.
It's a good question. The fact that they haven't
Dalman, but
I'll
pushing narrative.
I think they're fine with Drew Dalman, and I was on record saying that I thought we should probably be looking at a center over a guard, at least initially. The fact that they passed on John Michael Schmitz, the best center in the draft, and went with a left guard and Matthew Bergeron probably tells us that they're happy with Dalman, that they're going to move forward with Dalman. And I think he showed enough flashes, right? That's fine.
Unless they kick tires on Ben Jones.
Yeah, that could
maybe.
I'm sure they're in contact. I'm sure they've talked to him, right? He may be like that late, training camp guy that's like, okay,
they got his.
Yeah. He's on speed dial.
Right.
Right. So, yeah, I sort of think that they're gonna just pencil in Dalman and not worry about it. That they like Dalman. Clearly, they like Dalman. It's pretty obvious at this point they didn't really bring in competition. You sort of feel like Bergeron and Hennessy are going to duke it out at left guard. And that's, I think, nice that you're not rotating multiple guys on your offensive line, throughout training camp. I think if you're working with the left guards, hopefully you get that sorted out sooner rather than later. But I do think that the battle behind those guys for the backup, Matt Hennessy's probably your backup center. He could play center. He's your primary interior backup. But those other guys, I mean, it's like you're probably going to say goodbye to at least 2 of the 3 of Newsel, Justin Schaefer, Jalen Mayfield, and Javon Greene. Like 2 of those 3 guys are probably getting cut. So now maybe they're practice squad guys, but I mean, it's going to be a bloodbath. Like, I mean, seriously, like you're saying goodbye to multiple drafted rookies next year without question. So, or well, this training camp. So it's going to be exciting. And like, I think it's like, look, it's sink or swim, right? Like we're bringing in a lot of competition. Nobody's safe. Joe. Yeah, Joe, I agree. Like, none of those guys necessarily inspire confidence, but we're talking about at this point, the like 8th, 9th, 10th offensive lineman you're keeping, not like your starters. So, maybe you're hoping some of those guys pan out as like reserves. But my man Newsflash, okay, I'm saying it right now. Ryan Newsel is making this roster. Okay, I love Ryan Newsel. I could never slander that man. He's my new offensive line son. Because Matthew Bergeron's too obvious. I can't you can't just go Stan the second round rookie. That's not fun. I love Matthew Bergeron. That's just lazy. That's lazy takes. But that's the draft class. Maybe we get to a couple, any UDFAs that stood out to either of you guys. We haven't talked about them at all. I did do a deep dive, and by that I mean, I wrote a paragraph on each of them, which is a deep dive for UDFAs. So what do you guys think? Yeah.
I did not do a deep dive, but there was one that really did stand out to me, and that was the wide receiver out of I think it was Justin Marshall.
Yeah, the Buffalo guy. Yeah,
out of Buffalo. Yeah, just because he's what 6'6". He ran a 4.4.
It's not that big. Yeah.
Oh, is he?
Let me pull up his RAS.
Sorry. He's
6'1" and 6'8". Yeah, 6'2", 205. Yeah.
Well, his school profile had him at 6'3", so we can take that with a grain of salt. But
they're all
fast guy. He 9 touchdowns last year. I think he will compete for one of those last wide receiver spots. He'll be in that great wide receiver competition that we get every single year. He'll probably, maybe Penny Hart will probably be in it too, a Georgia State legend. That'll be the guy that I stand for sure if that signing does finally get completed, as the rumors are swirling today. But yeah, Justin Marshall is definitely one I'm keeping an eye out on.
Yeah. Eric, you got any undrafted free agent takes?
Marshall definitely is one that stands out. He definitely does, intrigue because of his deep ball ability. Linebacker Mike Jones out of LSU is another guy that kind of sort of stands out a little bit. Someone that was never really able to hit his stride at Clemson and LSU, but fits that athletic profile that you want, a guy that can be able to get from sideline to sideline. Another aggressive defender, able to lay the wood a little bit, get behind his pads. Again, the one thing about him is he's inconsistency and injuries.
Yeah,
that's what kind of sort of robbed his collegiate career, but he has the athletic profile that you kind of sort of would like on your roster. So that's another guy we'll keep an eye on. Very interesting, but also weird to see just a 6-man UDFA class.
Yeah, it's the smallest we've seen in what, like 7 years or more?
Probably, yeah. I'm so used to seeing a 30-man class.
Yeah, 2021 shout out. Yeah,
only seeing 6 guys. Like, wait, that's it? That's all we're adding? Like, okay, all right. So
yeah, let me shout out this guy who Xavier Malone from Henderson State. He was the one that was not reported before the official signings came out. I have no idea where Henderson State is. Interestingly, Henderson State played against Oklahoma Baptist, which is where another UDFA they had, Kylon Harris, however you pronounce that, played. So Xavier Malone, he is 5'7.5" and 182. So we'll start there, right? Small. He officially timed at 4.36, but apparently has been hand timed in the mid to low 4.2s. Jumped 10'5" in the broad. So, obviously impressive there. But let me read off his stats because they're comical. He caught 67 passes for 1,382 yards. That's almost 20 yards per catch and 15 touchdowns. And if you put on his tape, it's just hilarious. Like he's just so obviously better than every single other person in Division II. Like it's hilarious. And like, he's just breaking tackles. Like every time he catches the ball, he's breaking tackles. And that's like, I mean, it's D2 competition. Don't get me wrong. But like guys in D2 can still tackle. It's just the athleticism isn't there. So I think there's something there. If they're looking for a speed guy,
we were talking about Andre Yosevich during the
Yeah.
entire seventh round of the draft, or during all of day three, as needing that, that specialized wide receiver who can take the top off the defense now that Demir Bird isn't there anymore. So I mean, yeah, maybe this is the guy. And the best part about him is, I think he's doing an interview with Evan.
Yeah, Evan already interviewed him yesterday, I think, or something. So yeah, maybe we'll get him on the show, guys. However, that seems to have been the kiss of death for most of the people that we interview, unfortunately.
we won't mention that. We won't mention.
Yeah, we won't mention that. That's later. I'm sure it's just a coincidence, but well, hey, David Aneni, he didn't originally get to the Falcons, and then he did get here later, after the show. Because before, he didn't get drafted by Atlanta, then ended up signing here, during the season. So shout out to David Aneni. Excited to see him in training camp. But yeah, 3 wide receivers they brought in. I do think Justin Marshall obviously sort of more fits the Arthur Smith archetype. But if you think about it, they have some big guys already, right? They got Mac Hollins, they got Drake London, they got Kadero Hodge, all those bigger bodied receivers. And then they have Scotty Miller. And then there's, for the 5th guy, Brandon Brass says it's in Arkansas, Henderson State. Thank you. But if they want another speed guy, maybe they lean more in the Malone direction. It's not like Marshall's slow. I think he ran a 4.48, which is pretty good, obviously, especially at that size. But I go look at my article, guys. It's on the Falcoholic. It's called Get to Know Atlanta's UDFA Class. I put a link to his highlights in there. It just, if you want to laugh, just for that, it's fun to just watch this man dunk on every single person he played against in Division II. Yeah, before we wrap up, let me get to Vil Vat's question. This will be a good way to end the show with the $5. Vil, thank you so much, man. Said, interested to hear you guys take on the Falcons' ceiling this year. I see a similar ceiling to the 2016 Cowboys, who had that impressive regular season, but their lack of playoff experience ended up being their downfall. Obviously, I'd love to see us win the Super Bowl, but I want to be realistic. Yeah, Adnan, go to you first. What do you sort of see? Obviously, it's still really early in the process. We do have now the draft and free agency behind us, but going into the summer, where are you sort of at with your ceiling for this team?
As of right now, and this is taking into account the fact that the team is supposed to have, quote unquote, an easier schedule. I think based off last year's win percentage, it may be the easiest in the NFL. I haven't double checked that. Given the fact that they are in the most piss poor division in the NFL, I think the ceiling for this team is, I want to say 11 or 12 wins. Like, if everything just hits right. If Bijan Robinson is the rookie of the year, if this offensive line continues doing what they did last year, if Desmond Ritter takes a step and is much better than what we saw from Marcus Mariota last year, because this team wasn't really that far off getting 9 or 10 wins last season, at all. And that's with Mariota kind of holding the offense back, and with the defense being much worse than what it should be this year. I think I'm going to predict, going into the season, we'll see what happens. Right now, I'd be pretty firm on my prediction of about 10 wins and an NFC South title. And I know spring hope is eternal. But I genuinely think that this team will take a leap next year. And, depending on how Desmond Ritter plays, he's the wild card in all of this. This team could make some noise in playoffs too.
Yeah. Eric, where are you what do you think about the ceiling of this team going into 2023?
I agree with Adnan. I think the ceiling right now, if this was given the fact that they do have a much easier schedule than last year, you got an offensive line that's pretty much intact. You got a guy like Desmond Ritter who's going to have a second off season within the system. Getting Kyle Pitts back healthy as well. I think the ceiling is 12 wins. I predicted 7 wins last year, and they ended up going 7-10. And I think this year, right now, I think they're a 10-win team right now. On paper, if the season were to start next week, I think they're a 10-7 team right now. But the ceiling is 12. I think, accounting for, like I said, accounting for the schedule, they stay relatively injury free. Bijan is Bijan. Ritter has, a very smooth transition. I definitely think they're a team that can get the double-digit wins. They were, like Adnan said, they were not that far away, man. And given what they added this offseason, I mean, you're talking about 17 free agents, and then this draft class. You mean to tell me the addition of the Bud Dupree and Calais and
free agents too? These aren't just like run-of-the-mill depth guys. Like you got the best safety in free agency. You got a legitimate starter at defensive tackle. You got Calais Campbell, who half the league was bidding for.
Right. Put all that together, and then you add Bijan, and then you add a guy like Jonnu Smith. That can equate to 3 extra wins from last year. I find that hard to believe. Like I think that's definitely 3 games worth of work, 3 games, 3 wins right there that they've added just because of that. So we'll see how it goes, but I definitely think this is a playoff team this year.
And you look at just in the division, like, are the Saints really beating this Falcons team twice this year? The way they
God, I hope not. Please no.
Tampa, this team should sweep Tampa, right? Like
that offensive line is a big problem. And like as much as I like Cody Mauch, I think Cody Mauch is someone who's probably going to struggle as a rookie just because he's switching positions and he's having to come up from D2. And like they're putting Luke Goedeke, who was one of their worst starters last year, at right tackle. They literally didn't bring in anybody else. So
I think that defense is still going to be good, though.
The defense is still going to be good. Yeah.
They're going to have that in their back pocket. Not only that, Adnan, but the NFC as a whole. Like,
well, this conference is not what it was in 2016.
Right. The NFC North. Everyone wants to call that the NFC South as I guess a lackluster division, but there's no true proven winner in the NFC North, in my opinion. That's going to be a bloodbath as well. There's probably going to be one team that makes it out of there. So,
also, I was looking at some of the teams on the schedule, and the top 5 drafted quarterbacks this draft are all on Atlanta's schedule.
Yes.
They will face, and these are all really good prospects. Like, we really like Bryce Young. We really like CJ Stroud. We don't think that they'll be, game changers, amazing players in year one. It's an advantage facing a rookie quarterback.
What if Ritter plays well against all of them and goes undefeated?
Ritter looks better than Bryce Young this year, and the internet, melts down.
Oh, that would be a best case scenario for among them.
Just for the takes.
My chest would be sticking out. I'm be like, yeah, see there. What if?
What if the Falcons didn't even have to trade all those picks to move up for Ritter?
Right. And it's long term, it's still, whatever. But it would just be funny just for the takes.
It would be hilarious if he were to beat all 4 of them and go undefeated and play well.
Yeah. You will face CJ Stroud. You'll face Bryce Young twice. You'll face Anthony Richardson. I'm pretty sure Hooker won't play. I think the Lions are set with Jared Goff. I don't know. I
don't think Levis
will likely be the starter for Tennessee, but Will Levis is right there.
Yeah.
But yeah, the schedule is very favorable this year, and going into last year, the schedule was very difficult. That's why I predicted 5 wins for him last year, and they exceeded that expectation.
Don't they have Washington on the schedule as well?
They have Sam Howell, Washington at home.
Yep.
Like this isn't a murderer's row. This isn't a gauntlet. And the NFC is just how is there this much of a discrepancy? Like, I don't know how this happened. Yeah. But I guess that's what happens when, in the AFC they hit on all those amazing quarterbacks. And those teams were really bad, in really good years for them to, get a Trevor Lawrence number 1, to get a Joe Burrow number 1. To get a Justin Herbert in the top 5, the Chiefs, did what they did and the Bills did what they did. But, I could make an argument that the top 5 quarterbacks in the NFL all reside in the AFC.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's, you never really know. Like, strength of schedule is like inherently flawed, right? Because it's based on last year's schedule, and you never really know how it's going to shake out. But on paper, it's certainly favorable for the Falcons, and
it's all we can talk about right now. It's May.
Yeah, I mean, come on, guys. Like, I can't predict. I can't predict how these teams are going to do, right? Some are going to be better than expected. Some are going to be worse, right? So, it's, I do think like 10-7 should be the expectation, that they go 10-7 and at least compete for the NFC South till the very end. Right. I think 10-7 probably wins this division, but I do think like 12-13 wins, not likely, but look, it's possible. I mean, freaking look at the Minnesota Vikings. They went 13-4 with a negative point differential.
Well, Calais thinks so. Calais thinks this is a 13-win team, and he made that statement before they took Bijan.
Honestly, they owe it to us to win like 12 or 13 games.
We need the positive regression.
Like they owe it to us to just have that like type of year where even if it's a fake 13-win year like the 2010 season was, it's like I still deserve to experience that as it's happening.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and it's like, people are like, oh, 13 wins is ridiculous. Nothing's ridiculous when you have the Vikings going 13-4 with a negative point differential. That's still one of the most hilarious things that I've ever seen.
You say it's ridiculous. They could have won 12 games last year. We've been real. We've been honest.
Yeah. We could have been the Vikings. We could have been the Vikings and just won all those one-score games. Like, it could happen. So
it's not ridiculous.
It's just funny. It's just funny.
But then we wouldn't have Bijan.
Yeah. No, for the record, I think, maybe this was better in the long run. But let's just win week 1 and get that, like, we finally have a winning record for the first time since 2018. Let's just take care of that. Yeah. Let's take care of that to start, and then we'll go from there. That's my goal. But guys, great discussion as always. Really appreciate your time, Eric. Guys, he is at Eric _ Robinson. He's at ESPN Falcoholic alumnus as well. Eric,
ESPN
anything you're working on? ESPN Eric. Yeah, you should change your handle to that. That's a good one. Yeah. anything you want to plug though, for real?
Nah, man. I just wanna commend you guys, man, for keeping this show exactly where it is, where it needs to be, and the crossing over to the Believe Network, and another congratulations to you, Kevin, for that. And you guys are working your ass off, man, and it's paying off for sure.
Absolutely. Well, I appreciate that, man, for sure. We also have Adnan Ikic joining us at Say Which Way. Adnan, anything you're working on you want to let the people know about?
Just as always, I'm going to plug the site. We'll be doing our positional reviews post draft, so those will be going out soon. Just tracking all of these meetings, all of these potential signings. What the roster may shake out to be like. Just because it's a dead period doesn't mean that we don't have anything going over at Falcoholic. It's a 365-day-a-year league, and we're a 365-day-a-year site.
Yep. We had content coming during COVID year, okay? Like, every day we still had articles. We had literally nothing for months, and we had Evan simming a Madden league. Yes, we did. It was great. We were ready. We were ready to make that the coverage if there wasn't a season. So we were ready.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
We did.
Yeah.
Wow.
Thank God we didn't have to deal with that. But we would have made it work, but let's just count our blessings on that one for sure. But guys, really appreciate everyone for hanging out with us tonight. I'm Kevin Knight at Falcoholic Kevin. Like, subscribe if you haven't done so already. Leave us a 5-star review on your podcast platform of choice. This will be the last live show for a couple weeks. We'll be back next week. I'm on vacation. We'll be back on the 17th for the next live show. And I believe we'll be having Brett Jukes joining us on the 24th, if all goes well, for that live show. But don't you worry, I'll be leaving next week, but there will be podcast episodes that I've pre-recorded coming out literally all week. We'll have one on Monday, we'll have one on Friday, then we'll have one next Monday as well. So you'll have plenty of content. It just won't be live, but I'm sure you guys will enjoy it. We're going to have lots of takes on the draft class from Charles McDonald, from Daniel Flick, from Aaron Freeman. Also be having a roster projection coming out as well. So plenty of stuff to tide you over as we transition to this dead period, but don't you worry, we'll have you covered for anything that does happen. And of course, we'll find interesting things to talk about in the meantime. But settle in, guys, for some rest and relaxation as we go into the summer here and get prepped for training camp, which is, one more month and then training camp will be right around the corner. So thanks so much again. Yeah. Exciting stuff. Exciting as stuff. So, guys, really appreciate you once again. We'll see you next time on the Falcoholic Live. This show is presented, of course, by BetOnline. Thanks so much for their support. Have a great night, folks.